Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the legislature. It's such a pleasure to be here today on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees, and the Kosapsum nations. My name is Jennifer Whiteside. I'm BC's Minister of Labor, and I'm so grateful for everyone who has joined us today for this very exciting announcement about changes to the Employment Standards Act. And I am going to turn it right over to our keynote speaker, Premier David Eby, to make the announcement.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's great to see everybody again. Round two. We do indeed have some very good news about the Employment Standards Act here today. Our province has so much to be proud of. We talked about some of it this morning, the incredible resources of this place, our geographic positioning facing out to 2/3 of the world's population. But what makes it all possible are the people of British Columbia and making sure that we're supporting the people of the province. The economy is not just spreadsheets and numbers and lines on graphs. It is people. And without the people of this province, we wouldn't go anywhere. So making sure that people are looked after and supported and protected is key to ensuring the success of our province as a whole. And our government's time in office has been marked by ensuring those protections are in place at the workplace. For example, we eliminated the need for sick notes for short-term illnesses. So if you're sick, you don't have to go into work. You've got mandatory sick days that are recognized, and your job will be protected while you are away and sick. And they are paid sick days, so you're looked after, and you don't have to bring a doctor's note. We've increased minimum wage every year to ensure that people are supported with cost of living and linked up minimum wage to inflation to ensure that people don't fall behind, especially people at the lowest wage jobs in the province. And we've also improved supports, improved protections for people working in app-based ride-hailing or delivery jobs, for example, making sure that they're looked after as well. And we've seen the results of that. We've seen app-based workers for Uber here join a union. We've seen Starbucks workers and Amazon workers join a union, the ticket to middle class prosperity for them and their families in service jobs. But we know that there's more to do. And one of the areas where we know we have to do better is supporting people with long-term illnesses, chronic conditions, or conditions that don't immediately resolve after a short period of time, illnesses like cancer or multiple sclerosis, to make sure that people are supported, that they don't have to choose between their health and focusing on their health and their family at a time when they're chronically ill and focusing on their job. They're able to just focus on getting better. It supports employers, ensuring they're able to maintain access to their skilled employees and not lose that talent and experience when people are on long-term leave. So I'm proud to say that we have introduced a bill that will ensure that we're looking after people facing those kinds of illnesses, ensuring that their jobs will be protected for the long term. This bill allows up to 27 weeks of unpaid leave if you are facing a catastrophic illness every year. It doesn't all have to be taken in a lump, but it ensures that if you're doing chemotherapy, for example, you're able to take the time that you need off of work and return to your job. It will go into effect later this fall if passed and ensure that workers are looked after. It's hard to imagine anything more challenging or awful than facing a diagnosis of a major and catastrophic health issue like this. But knowing that your job will be there when you're completing treatment, when you're able to return to employment, is just one less thing for people to have to worry about. We're focused on building a better province together, and ensuring that British Columbians are looked after is a key part of that. We've got more to do, but today's announcement is a big step in the right direction. And I'd like to pass it back to the Minister of Labour and thank her and her team for advancing this important legislation in British Columbia.
Thank you so much, Premier. This announcement today really is the result of shared work that we have undertaken with healthcare advocates, with employer groups, with worker groups, and some of those healthcare groups are here today. And you'll be hearing shortly from Andrea Seal, who is the CEO of the Canadian Cancer Society. You'll also be hearing from Sue Whitaker, who is with the Multiple Sclerosis Society in BC. And we're also joined today in the audience by Dr. Christina Friedenreich, who is a member of the board of the Canadian Cancer Society and also a cancer researcher, as well as Elena Durisic-Luton, who is the executive director of the Multiple Sclerosis Society. And I just wanted to add that there is no question, as the Premier outlined, that workers are the center of the economy that we want to build in this province. And this change that we are making to the Employment Standards Act is something that patient advocate groups have been talking about for a long time. And this spring, we heard from British Columbians like Sherry, who traveled down from Fort St. John to share with me her experience of living with multiple sclerosis. We heard from Bailey and Kathy, both of whom are cancer survivors, who shared with me and many of my MLA colleagues their experiences and who advocate passionately for better job protections for people dealing with serious health diagnoses. And it's really their stories and their advocacy that articulates the need for workers to have the time to undergo medical treatment and to recover from their illness and injuries. There are currently no provisions under our Employment Standards Act that protect the jobs for workers who are unable to work due to their own long-term illness or injury. And I want to emphasize that I truly believe that most employers in BC are already doing this work. But workers who experience long-term disability or illness have protections under the Human Rights Code, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. This proposed change will ensure that that protection is built into the Employment Standards Act. And you know, for people facing a difficult diagnosis and maybe, well, a life-altering situation, whether it's short-term or long-term, the certainty of knowing that their job will be there for them provides relief. It alleviates an unnecessary burden on their journey to recovery. And in British Columbia, with more than 31,000 people diagnosed with cancer each year, with over 11,000 people in British Columbia living with multiple sclerosis, as well as people living with other chronic illnesses, it's vital that we provide this important assurance to workers and their families. And I would say this includes as well survivors of intimate partner violence, mostly women and gender diverse people, for whom up to 92% have signs and symptoms of traumatic brain injury. And we know that 90% of intimate partner violence cases reported to police involve survivors ages 15 to 54 in their prime working years. And for them, the guarantee of job protection may help invite survivors to feel safe in seeking services for their recovery. The amendment we're introducing today will bring British Columbia's protections up to the standard that is already in place in other jurisdictions in Canada, such as Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland and Labrador, and federally regulated industries and workplaces. These changes are expected to come into effect later this fall, once passed by the legislature and upon receiving royal assent. And lastly, I just really want to thank all of the business and industry and employer associations who spent time talking with us about this and consulting on this change. The Retail Council of Canada, the Tourism Industry Association of BC, the BC Hotel Association, Restaurants Canada, the Association of Business Improvement Areas, the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, the Business Council of BC, and more. We also heard from patient groups, advocacy groups, as well as union groups and the BC Federation of Labor. And I think across that whole spectrum, there is really a shared recognition of the importance of supporting people at work when they are suffering from a life-altering diagnosis, and broad agreement that workers deserve to be able to return to their jobs once they and their healthcare providers say they are ready. Nobody in BC deserves to lose their work and livelihoods because they've been diagnosed with a serious illness or because they're recovering from a terrible injury or intimate partner violence. And with that, I would like to introduce Andrea Searle from the Canadian Cancer Society to tell us a bit more about the experience of people living with cancer. Andrea?
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. At the Canadian Cancer Society, we fund life-saving cancer research. We provide trusted information and support services for people who are facing cancer, and we advocate for policies and health improvements that change people's lives, like this one will. It's an honor to be here to mark this important protection for British Columbians who are facing cancer and other serious illnesses. Here in British Columbia, I'm sorry to share that more than 30,000 people are diagnosed with cancer each year. And of course, treatment often means that you have to step away from work for a period of time. And you might be surprised to know that 40% of people who are diagnosed with cancer are in those working years. What does cancer mean to your job? While most employers are compassionate and supportive when someone faces cancer, that's not always the case. People can feel pressure to keep working when they're very sick. They can feel pressure to hide their illness. Some are fired and too exhausted to take it up as a human rights complaint. So this will protect them going forward. The financial hardships that come with a cancer diagnosis are often unexpected. Income loss and out-of-pocket costs of cancer that can include things that just aren't covered, things like medications, hospital parking, home care, that can all add up. And in fact, we know from our research that it adds up to an average cost of $33,000 over the lifetime of each person who's diagnosed with cancer. So it's a terrible financial hit. But the worries go beyond money alone. Cancer creates so much fear and uncertainty about your ongoing ability to support your family in the future, support yourself, and even understand what your future might hold. So this is why today's announcement matters so much. By extending job-protected leave to 27 weeks, which is just over 6 months, BC government is giving people with cancer some certainty that they'll have time to focus on their health and their recovery. And it means that someone who's undergoing treatment, for example, for breast cancer or colon cancer, where recovery typically takes between 26 and 37 weeks, they have the time to heal without feeling that pressure to return to work or without worrying that they will lose their job. And as the minister said, this brings British Columbia in line with the federal EI sickness benefit, which provides the income during that period so that employers are not penalized. And now we're matching other provinces across the country who have recently made similar commitments. And it's a real mark of fairness and compassion and certainty for patients and families and their caregivers. And it's taken many people working together to come to this place and study the issue, study the impact, and listen to people who are living with serious illness. We say it takes a society to take on cancer, and this is a great moment of coming together. Patients and caregivers have really been leading the way, and we've been supporting. The federal government has been supporting, and provinces as well. Everyone's collaborating to create job protection for those who need it. So we're extremely grateful. We would like to thank Premier Eby, thank you, Minister Whiteside, and all of the MLAs who have been acting together on this issue. People with cancer and serious illnesses, thank you. I think cancer affects all of us, and I hope that all BC MLAs will be able to support this great development. Thank you.
Andrea, thank you. Thank you so much for those words, and really thank you to the Canadian Cancer Society for everything that your team does, that your board members do, that volunteers do to advocate for and to highlight the challenges for people who are living with cancer. I'd now like to welcome Sue Whitaker, a volunteer and ambassador with MS Canada, to share some remarks.
It is an honor to be here with you this afternoon. I'm grateful to Minister Whiteside for inviting me to make some brief remarks about job-protected leave. The introduction of this legislation is an important milestone for workers in British Columbia. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, or MS, in 1996 at the age of 37. At that time, I was a kindergarten teacher who loved every minute with those young learners. Then I was diagnosed with MS, news that would test my resilience. For about 6 months prior, I had been experiencing little stumbles when I walked, as if I had a pebble underfoot, and then eventually it began to feel as if my left leg was literally becoming longer than my right. After having some tests and 2 MRIs, I received my diagnosis. What I had been experiencing was foot drop, a common symptom of MS due to lesions on my brain. As my disease progressed, I had to leave my job as a kindergarten teacher. It had been a big part of my identity for 22 years. It was a big change. Who would I be now? And one that brought sadness and frustration. It's known that more than 60% of people living with MS eventually reach unemployment. The unpredictable and episodic, yet progressive nature of MS often leads to reduced employment and eventually a premature exit from the workforce. Introducing 27 weeks of job-protected medical leave will offer protection for workers in our province so they don't have to make the tough choice, like I did, to leave a job they love. Thank you for the opportunity to share a bit of my story on this very important day.
Thank you so much, Sue, for everything that you do to advocate for people living with multiple sclerosis, and thank you to MS Canada for everything they do. And thank you all for being here today. We're very proud to stand up with working people in British Columbia today, tomorrow, and always. And with that, we will open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Minister Whiteside. We're going to take questions from the media now. All members of the media will have one question and one follow-up. We're going to start with Mark Page from the Black Press. Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, thank you. This question is for the Premier. This is left over from the last press conference about energy issues. I just was hoping for some more information about what it means for these AI data centers to have, to go out for a competitive bid. It sounds like this will give the BC government some sort of veto over new AI data centers. Is that the case, or am I misunderstanding it? And is there any thought to, considering the well-known water usage of these data centers, is there any thought to creating a policy whereas they have to go through an environmental assessment process?
Sure. The current process is first come, first serve for plugging into the electrical system in British Columbia. These AI data centers use a huge amount of electricity and provide relatively low levels of employment. We can see the demand across North America and around the world for these data centers. There's a huge number of proponents that want to bring these projects forward. What this legislation does is it allows us to enter into negotiations with them. What benefits are you bringing to British Columbians? How are you dealing with the question of water use? How are you dealing with the issue of waste heat? Are you creating employment benefits, national security benefits, data sovereignty benefits to British Columbians that will assist us in moving forward? Because we have other projects that also want that electricity. So it gives us the opportunity to hit pause and say, what are you bringing to the table? And also to negotiate rates, to talk about what a fair rate is for the data center that's being brought forward. So it is a different treatment than the others that we fast track to ensure that we're maximizing employment and opportunity in the province. But it's necessary given the wide diversity of proposals that we're seeing across North America for these kinds of centers.
And follow-up, Mark?
Yes, can you also talk a bit about the cryptocurrency mining piece? And, how does the BC government ensure that, a new cryptocurrency mining operation does not connect to the grid? Is there, I guess, is this, measured by BC Hydro, or how is this enforced, I guess?
Yeah, the electrical demands of the data centers for cryptocurrency mining are massive. The video cards and the mining cards that they run use huge amounts of electricity and create significant amounts of waste heat. It's very easy to detect when a data center comes online. It's a massive power draw, and it requires a hookup to the electrical system that requires the assistance of BC Hydro. So there are lots of ways to detect. It's not something that could be smuggled in like a grow-op or that kind of thing. And in the pre-legalization era. It's where it has to be detected through smart meters and that sort of thing. This is a massive industrial load that requires industrial hookups from BC Hydro, and by necessity applying to BC Hydro to be able to do that.
Thank you, Premier. Next, we'll head to Andrew McLeod with the Tyee.
Yeah, also on the North Coast transmission line, I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about what the announcement this morning means for the role of the BCUC.
Sorry, what the announcement means?
For the role of the BC Utilities Commission.
Oh yeah, so the BCUC plays a vital role. I mean, this is an organization that's made about 80 decisions in relation to BC Hydro applications over the last year or so, and has in fact turned down some of those applications. So they have a vital role to play, but when you're talking about a big province building initiative like the North Coast Transmission Line, that's going to create the level of prosperity that we expect it to, about 10,000 jobs, tens of billions of dollars in capital investment, $10 billion a year in GDP growth. We just believe that when you have a project of that scale, going to the BCUC and delaying it by asking, is this in the public interest? When really that is a decision that should sit with the legislature. Is it in the public interest? And be held accountable through that. There are lots of pieces of work for the BCUC, but this is one that just felt obvious to us as elected representatives to say, this is in the public interest, we stand behind it, we're going to drive it, and we'll be held accountable for that decision electorally.
And Andrew, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so how do you ensure that existing ratepayers don't end up paying for it?
Well, existing ratepayers do pay for upgrades to the system, and what we're doing here is saying that a region of the province that has been underserved by high voltage electricity for a long time and has suffered as a result, has not seen that economic development that other regions have had, we're going to give them that chance to prosper and succeed. That other regions, the Lower Mainland, the interior, the Northeast and the Kootenays have had, largely because of geography, because they have those huge hydroelectric dams, or they have the wires just taken. Of course, we would build the connections to the Lower Mainland, for example. So what we're trying to do here is ensure that we're developing our electrical system in a way that creates prosperity in every corner of the province, not miss a huge opportunity that's in front of us. And we're going to be looking to the federal government for support as well to mitigate the impact on ratepayers. This is a project that is in the national interest. It will drive the national GDP. It will drive prosperity for Canadians. And it will also enable connections up through the Yukon. That's why it's #1 on the Yukon's list in terms of major projects, because of their concerns about northern sovereignty and defense applications for that electricity as well. So by working together with the federal government and the Yukon and private industry, we believe this is a significant nation-building project that will result in federal government participation and help mitigate some of those impacts.
Thank you, Premier. Next, we'll head to Mr. Jeremy Hainsworth from BC Today. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I'm also on the held over question list. Going back to Cowichan, given the trajectory that so many land title cases have had over decades now, if you got the appeal gets, a decision gets appealed, it goes to the Supreme Court of Canada. So we've got a lot of money and work going into the appeal process and then the leave to appeal going to Ottawa anyway. These things keep happening over and over again and costing a lot of time and money. Why not go to the reference in the first place?
It's a great question, Jeremy, but we kind of take a step back from that and say, can we get out of court? Can we reach agreements outside of court with nations about how we work together? So North Coast Transmission Line is a great example. Do we really need to go to court to know that there are many nations that have an interest here and that we have to cooperate with them and find a path forward to get this done? Do we really need to go to court to find out that the Tahltan First Nation has a huge say in all these mines in their territory in the Northwest? Or can we just sit down and enter agreements around land use planning and how we're going to do this together and give opportunities around construction and apprenticeships, lifting the quality of life in different communities? That's the approach we want to take. That's what led to the HIDA agreement that we entered into recently. Specifically in that agreement, we carved out private property and said it is not affected by this agreement. It enables us to control those kinds of things that cause a lot of anxiety, but also find ways to work together in a more constructive way. So we try to stay out of court wherever possible, but when we do go to court, we want the full set of facts to be in front of the court. We want the court to understand what's being argued, and when you do a reference case to the Supreme Court of Canada, you run the risk of an academic decision coming back that is disconnected from the realities on the ground. And we don't want that at all. We want the court to understand all of the things that are at play here: the nation's rights, the concerns around the property owners, and how the hearing was held. And we have to bring that forward in order to get a proper hearing.
And Jeremy, do you have a follow-up?
Wouldn't a reference to the Supreme Court involve interveners, such as the people you've just mentioned?
Yeah, it could. The challenge is when you do a reference, and I don't want to get all law professory here, but when you do the challenge to the Supreme Court of Canada versus the appeal, there's the whole trial record that doesn't make its way to the Supreme Court of Canada. So every decision that the judge made, including the crucial decision to not serve the landowners in the first place, even though the province said these folks need to know what's going on, they need to be told about this court hearing, they need to have a right to participate, and the court decided not to have those landowners served, that has to be in front of the court, and it would not be in front of the Supreme Court of Canada, for example. Having a really concrete example of the First Nations rights at play, of the industries that are in the area, of the private homeowners, of the potential implications, enables the court to really grapple with the challenging nature of these issues. In the absence of those facts, it gets way too easy to be academic about it and disconnected from the lived realities of people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike. So we really want the court to be grounded in that lived reality, and that's what the trial record does, and that's why the appeal process through the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada helps. The other piece is there's a case just like this in New Brunswick, and we expect that case will be proceeding on about the same track to the Supreme Court of Canada, and it will allow the court to see the national aspect of this issue and consider the national implications of the decision.
Thank you very much, everyone. That concludes today's event. Thank you
Thanks,
for joining
everybody.
us.
And thanks very much to our friends who joined us today for this important announcement.